Hi, I'm Paul Bowman, CEO at Wexer, the digital fitness specialist who deliver over 25 million fitness experiences per year for our partners worldwide. Welcome to the Wexer podcast, where I'll be speaking with industry experts to bring you insights and advice to support your business journeys. In today's episode, I'll be chatting with Matthew Januszek, entrepreneur and co-founder of Escape Your Limits and host of Escape Your Limits podcast. I must admit, I'm intimidated being the host with you, sir. But how are you?
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate you having me on. And it's Escape Fitness, just Escape Fitness equipment company, and then Escape Your Limits podcast. But you know, you did pretty well, particularly with the name.
Okay, I apologize. Correction. and then, so like I guess how I always start these podcasts is: did fitness find you, or did you find fitness? Give me the background here.
Yeah, I was 15, I guess, and had quite a few people around me that were into bodybuilding at the time. One of my best friend's father used to compete, and my cousin, and so for me, living in the middle of nowhere, which is sort of where I was in England, where I grew up.
There was kind of interest.
There's a place in England north of London called Peterborough, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere. But we sort of lived outside of Peterborough in another village called Wexer, which you probably wouldn't have heard of. And so there wasn't a lot to inspire kids when they were younger, apart from if you wanted to be a potato farmer or something like that. So,
potato growers.
Yeah. So I kind of I didn't really get into sport, but bodybuilding for me seemed quite appealing. I watched things like Pumping Iron, and I just wanted to go and live in California and pump up my muscles and live in gyms and sort of hang out with pick up girls and that sort of thing. So that was my it's quite a compelling vision when I was younger, and that stayed with me pretty much.
Still a compelling vision now. I don't know, have you executed it?
Yeah, so that was how it started, and it delivered on more than one areas.
and then so tell like your entrepreneurial journey, because that always fascinates me in terms of how let's go deep into that. How did you build Escape? How did that all come?
I'd always been interested in business. My grandfather had a small business, and I used to work with him when I had my school holidays in the summer. I'd go and work with him because there wasn't a lot to do, to be honest, and I enjoyed working and doing stuff and getting paid for money. So I think I'd always had this sort of interest, probably from him, and always, from as far as I remember, was keen to leave school. Wasn't great at school, so first opportunity I got to leave, I jumped on it and wanted to start working. Always had a couple of jobs, but never really found anything that I was excited about until we actually tried. My dad tried to open a gym unsuccessfully with a friend from a gym, which probably wasn't a great idea. Good job that didn't go anywhere. But sort of looked at different ways to get involved in the gym business, and then sort of, I guess when I was in my 20s, I shook off the having fun, going out and partying, and because I worked in the nightclub industry and arranged parties for quite a long time, and so managed to balance. Tried to balance a lifestyle, which was going out and meeting girls, with making money. That was really if I could do that, if I could make enough money to travel and do that, that was fine. But then I got to an age where I thought, look, I need to do something more serious, and then we sort of came up with this idea of making dumbbells and weight plates in Poland. That was really the first sort of first starting point I can remember to Escape, and it went from there really 25 years ago.
Yeah, and like I just every time I can remember seeing a catalog come across a gym, everyone would look at it just probably because of the sexiness of it. Like where did that come from? Your background in terms of nightclubs and that type of approach, or because the marketing for Escape has always been on point. Like I think it's always been, like, I guess, quite Marmite-y, some would say. But for me, I like it. So like, where did that come from? Where did this creative side of the business come from? Is that you and your background, or?
Yeah, I'd always had a passion for design, and And one of the first people we got on board was a designer, and a guy who was involved in creating that was Nick. And we used to just really bounce off each other. And originally we distributed products. We didn't make a lot of our own. So it was really trying to take other people's products and make them look a lot better than what they did, and photograph them in nice ways and put models with them, and then create catalogs.
You made the dumbbell the most sexiest I've ever seen.
That's right. Yeah, it's quite difficult to sort of make some of that stuff look sexy, and and so it was always a passion, and it's quite nice you recognize that, because it was always something we wanted. We wanted people, rather than just to have one of the these cheapo printed catalogs that people get using thin paper. We always wanted it to be something that people would never want to throw away. They would they would get it, and even if they weren't necessarily going to buy straight away, it was one of those things that you thought, well, I can't stick it in the bin, so I'll put it somewhere nice, coffee table sort of thing. That was the original idea, and people tended to do that. They kept it, and I suppose because it always stuck around, people would go back and refer to it, as opposed to just toss it in the bin when they tried to clear the desk out. So
no, it worked. And for most of the listeners are entrepreneurs themselves, or large club owners. Like, what for you? What's been the biggest kind of hurdles that you've had to overcome?
It seems to have been 25 years of overcoming.
I can appreciate that. Honestly.
we were just chatting off camera about this, but it's I think anyone goes into business thinking it's going to be easy is probably fooling themselves. I guess I think the difference is, like, if you enjoy that, like we've been come through COVID, and I think the industry now, I think it's fair to say that anyone that's really honest with their hand on their heart will say, look, it's the whole industry, whether you're manufacturing or whether you're owning a club, it's tough. There's still a lot of work going on, and every day there's a kind of, it seems as though for the last 3 or 4 years there's always been something new, whether it's shipping, whether it's supply chain, raw materials, price. There's always been something, and every day you kind of deal. Well, it feels like every day, even though it's probably not that much. But you kind of wake up and you've got your plan for the week, and then something comes and hits you. And I think if you can look at that and enjoy it, enjoy the fight, enjoy about getting back in the ring and doing it, then business is for you. If you can't do that, then you're probably better off not running your own business, because it's pretty tough. And I think it's tough. I've met lots of people recently that have been in business for a long time, and so many people are like, look, I'm ready to sort of hang up my hang up my hat. I don't need this anymore. It's only for the brave, I think, at the moment.
and do you think, of course, I know, just logistics wise, especially in your line of business, it's been hard, but like, do you think a lot of this is because there is demand that has left the fitness industry? Like, of course, we had a huge boom, especially from a digital point of view. People have come back to clubs, and some clubs are doing better than others, but we've still got a recovery and to kind of fund, so to speak, right? Is that, are you feeling that as a supplier?
I've done a lot of work to really understand it, and it's very difficult to fully understand what's going on, particularly when you're looking at the global market. If we just picked a country, you could analyze that in some ways, but when you're looking at the whole globe, and then you're looking at, fitness is quite broad now. There's many different channels. You've got everything from hotels and spas and apartment complexes and education and boutiques and gyms and wines. Like, it's so many different areas, and they've all got a slightly different story to tell. I think one of the things that gives me confidence is, look, since the pandemic, there's a lot more awareness and of health and fitness from the general public. So that's a great, and I certainly don't see any signs of that slowing down or changing. So that's great. Okay, so we're in a good industry. We're not in an industry that's dying. But then I think what probably has changed is where people go to access that. So if you own a gym, there's a lot more competition, because you've got the boutiques have been around for a while, so that's not new. But you've got, like, particularly in America, you've got apartment complexes that have been continuing to open up, and the gyms in some of these places are fabulous. They've got indoor areas, outdoor areas. They've got concierge service there. They're absolutely phenomenal. So that's another competitor. And in most buildings, you've got a very, very, even where I am, you've got a very, very good standard of gym. So you don't need to go and pay for one. I think you've got hotels and fitness events, and you've got fitness apps, and so I think the competition has increased, and there's been a lot of investment over the last 5 years for a number of different, in real life or digital fitness solutions. And so I think there may have been a little bit more of an oversupply, which everybody's trying to deal with. On top of that, most businesses, the fact that commercial fitness facilities have been closed down for a long time, and they've been paying rent. Somebody's paying for that. That's not coming for free. And I was chatting to a big sort of a buyer for a very, very large chain, and what they said is, look, normally there's a pipeline of looking for properties, bidding for properties, signing contracts, planning to either build or fit out, and a lot of that pipeline, for a number of reasons, has closed down. Finding new sites and building facilities is a lot more expensive than what it was before, so that's got an impact. So a lot of people are now looking at existing facilities and maybe renovating them, or going into an existing business that's distressed and acquiring it and tidying it up. So I just think there's so many different things going on. And then if you look at Europe, which we've got a business over there, and we both sort of worked in England for a while. They've got the war going on in Russia. They've got the energy inflation, and although that's not necessarily stopping everything, what I feel it does do is it creates this sense of a sort of concern and fear and doubt about the future. So when it comes to making big bets on anything, everybody's being a lot more cautious than what they were before. So I think when you put all that together, it's rough sailing at the moment for anyone.
Margins are getting hit, and especially if you've had to take on debt, which most operators had to during COVID to survive. You've got to pay that debt, right? So and sometimes even if the numbers are coming back to normal, you've still got all those overheads that you've got to clear out before you can look at reinvestment. I was talking to one of the top club operators, and they were just saying that normally the free cash flow, they're operating nearly 10 times the amount of free cash flow, because of course they've always had that support, but they've had to use that to survive. And then where they're looking at buying new clubs or opening new clubs, and we all know how much a capex is to create a good experience in a club. You just can't do that anymore. Because you've just got to pay. It's just, you got to pay something. You got to pay the things that are most important. So sometimes that's the struggle. But I'm
and the cost of money as well is obviously higher.
Of course. But I'm interested to hear from you, because I think probably both of our businesses have really been impacted in a positive way by multifamily housing units. We're corporates. The amount of gyms that we're seeing, and how good these corporate gyms are, are like models like Until. It's not really that new. It's coming more and more. Do you? Because I always kind of look at fitness from I take my fitness club hat off and go, right. I will go to the best experience that's closest to me. And do you think that is the disruptive key? Because actually, a lot of these places are just taking the surrounding people. Right, and then that's disrupting the overall gym, because not as many people are actually willing to. I guess everyone knows that there's things on their doorstep now, rather than having to travel to it. Do you think that is probably the biggest disruptor competitively?
I'm not sure. We've got a gym in our apartment block, and I can walk there, and it's very good. I choose to drive a little bit further to get a different experience, but I'm not the typical gym goer either, so it's difficult to sort of add too much weight to that. But I don't know. I think we've got to. One of the big issues, I suppose, is that in a lot of cases, and this is we all know this, is that we're not necessarily delivering on the promise that we made when you come into a fitness club. The people come there to get a result, and I think in most cases people don't get what they need. They're not getting the support. It's quite difficult. You know, there's a lot going on. If someone comes to you and they're overweight and they want to get in shape, it's not a case of just sticking them on a few bits of equipment for a few weeks and telling them to come in 3 or 4. There's a lot more going on than that. So I do think that kind of positioning things in the eyes of the consumer a little bit better and being a little bit honest, a bit more honest with people, I think that will help. And this is feedback I've got from people that own lots of gyms. You know, they're saying, look, we don't. There's a mismatch in between what the person on the street believes we can offer and what we can really actually offer. So I think we could definitely do a better job of managing expectations and creating, deciding where you're going to be, but do a great job at that. I think some of the low costs maybe are successful because they do sort of, you know, under promise and over deliver from some respects. However, I do feel that the challenge with the low costs is that you're not, if you really need help, then they're not necessarily the best places to go and do that. I would say they more suit people that have got a rough idea about what they want to do and are able to sort of do DIY fitness. And if you need that more support, then I think it's like, all right, we'll go to another facility, and that should create a lot of opportunities to hire good trainers, to pay them the right amount of money, and maybe to charge more for something that is probably in some cases we may be not charging enough for what we're delivering if you compare it to other industries.
I imagine you've chatted to Eric from McKinsey, but he said that a lot. Like, you know, like all the price points he feels across the world should be increased by at least, you know, another 10 to 15 US dollars in terms of the value that we give. But we're in this little race to the bottom type model. Evidently, you know, he's presented, and I imagine you've seen him present, but he's presented that it will come back. You know, like currently there's the boutiques and the low cost, and you know there's the squeeze middle, so to speak. But naturally, the pricing points will come back higher as people demand more service levels, and maybe the demand is not there right now. But you know,
well, I'd question whether the demand's not there. You know, if you look at some of the things that are, like I can only in America, for example, you've got a lot of these. A lot of people now are going and having drips and going to some of these recovery places. Great idea, love it. I use many of those. You look at how much you pay, and the nice thing about it is you kind of sit down, you stick your arm out, and you come out and you feel great. So I understand why that's quite appealing, because you don't have to do any work necessarily apart from sort of pay the money. But if you look at how much the cost per hour for some of that stuff, you literally pay hundreds and hundreds for one session, and you're encouraged to do that fairly regularly. When you really appreciate exercise, and I've done it for all of my life, and there's so many different parts of this health and wellness space in terms of what you can do, but it's so inexpensive, and even with some very basic coaching, get a trainer, an expert, whether it's from nutrition, get an assessment. You do that maybe once a week or a couple of times a month, and okay, it is a reasonable amount of money, but it isn't a lot of money when you compare it to other things. Whether going out for a meal nowadays in America, you go out for a meal for two people in a reasonably nice place, and you can easily spend $250 for dinner in a reasonably nice place. You can spend like $50 just to get an average lunch now, and we went for breakfast, me and my wife, and it was just a coffee shop. We had some muesli and coffees, and that was $100 with tip. So I think it's paying $200 or $300 a month, although it kind of sounds a lot in one respect, to for your health, it isn't a lot of money, is it? And so I think the gap between the typical amount that you would pay for a membership and maybe if we were sitting in front of somebody selling it, doing a really, really good job and supporting them, then I do feel it could be a lot higher than maybe where things are as an industry.
Totally agree. Like, and then kind of moving, thinking this is a digital podcast and all that. Where's your view on hybrid? The buzzword we hear constantly in the market is the personalization at scale, and how do we deliver the value through technology? Where are you sitting on that?
I've bounced around a lot. Like you, I speak to people all the time in the podcast, and you kind of have arguments for both, very strong arguments. Some people have their DNA in the business. Maybe they've got an owner, partners or whatever that really understand that, and they're able to execute or partner up in a really, really good way. Other people are very much, look, we run gyms, we're great at that, we train staff, we provide a great member experience. That's not for us. And so, but I think that we can't get away from the fact that we all, we live most of our lives through this device, this phone. For those of you can't see what I'm holding up, and so being able to, I suppose, being able to continue the relationship from the face-to-face experience in some way, whether that maybe it's workouts, maybe it's just communication, maybe it's community, maybe it's support, whatever it is. I think you've somehow got to find a way to become part of their life in some way. It's difficult. Everyone's trying to figure out exactly what that is, but we all know, like, fitness and health and wellness isn't just an event that you do 2 or 3 times a week. It's so many more things, and I think it's just trying to find a way without kind of strong arming and becoming the dominant thing. It's just subtly, you've got to be part of what's going on somehow.
Well, we're seeing ourselves, and to your point, exactly, it's what is the strategy, and are you taking technology as a supplemental thing that supports that overall environment, or is it embedded itself as a delivery mechanism? And we're seeing like 40% of our views on the platform now are wellness content. So sleep stories, meditation stories, inspirational, and it's so the platform overall is becoming more of like an entertainment, like a fitness entertainment type platform or inspirational platform than it is the traditional, hey, I'm just going to work out in convenience at my own home, which I think is right. There's nothing better than the physical experience, but to your point, we're going to support everyone 24/7 and be there. That brand has to be there in their eyes, because there is so many competition, and if you're not supporting them and not adding value even outside the 4 walls, I struggle to see how clubs succeed. But I am biased. But what's your opinion?
Well, I guess it's very easy for us to look at the world from our own, through our own set of glasses, and in some ways it's good, but in other ways I think it limits our thinking. What you said was a beautiful example of from what I know about Wexer, and I've seen a lot of the stuff, and know the company for a long time, is it's kind of fitness exercise. That's where I'd see it. But really, where does that sort of start and finish? And I suppose for a lot of people, it is the meditation, the breathing, the relaxation, the stretching. That is a great gateway potentially into other things, or maybe it just stays there. But I think if we just think of it as the bit that people don't like, then that's a challenge, and you could have that same conversation about a fitness facility. I think there's a big barrier for someone to, unless you're crazy people like us, but to go to a gym 3 or 4 times a week, it's not a nice experience. It's painful, all those reasons. But I think trying to create these small routines, whether it's walking, stretching, breathing, you're definitely you're definitely sort of in the crowd, even if it's sort of on the outside. And then the goal is really just to bring you sort of closer, so you're able to sort of experience more things.
Do you think clubs should own, I guess from my paradigm, I'm always going, when someone chooses to, walk into the gym to sign up, we have a responsibility to try and achieve the results. Maybe too old school in my thinking, but therefore, then everything needs to be around that. So, all the solutions we need to do to support them, which is the 24/7 in terms of looking after themselves, both on a recovery side, both on a nutrition side, all the rest of it, or is that a paradigm that needs to change for the industry rather than just be delivering these hour experiences?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I interviewed a lady called Sophie Lawler who said, who changed my view on it. She said, look, it's not our responsibility to change anyone. And that's part of the problem. We're giving the impression that that's what we do, and we don't.
Right.
The people that are going to do that are the people who walk in our gyms. We're going to assist them through that journey, but it's not. We can't do that. And she's absolutely right. It's like if you're a personal coach or a therapist or whatever, you're not the one that's going to change. They are. The challenge with that is it's not a great marketing story. It's not very sexy. Okay. No. Right. Let me break this down for you. Okay. First thing is like, it's not our problem. We're not the ones that are going to do it. It's quite difficult. You've got to turn up 3 or 4 times a week. It's hard work. It's painful. You're not going to enjoy it, etc. That's just not a great sales pitch. But I'm making a bit of a joke about it, but I do think that if you come from a place where clearly Sophie has, and you take that approach, it does force you to now start thinking differently about how you organize things. And I think that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, I feel like we could just stay on this for at least an hour. But I want to move to your podcast. Like, tell me the journey of it, because it's probably, I think, fair to say, the most successful podcast in fitness. I've learned a lot out of it, so I appreciate everything you do for the industry with that. So, where did it come from? What was the thought pattern? What have you learned?
Where do I start? It was a friend of mine in England, a guy called Rob Moore. He's got a very successful podcast called the Disruptive Entrepreneur, and he happened to have an office right across the road from me, and so we became quite good friends. He invited me on his podcast, and I'm like, what's this podcast thing? And this, I'm going back sort of probably 7 or 8 years now, and he said, he explained to me why he did it, and he said, you should do it. You should do one in your business. And I spent probably about 6 or 7 months thinking about it, and decided when I was out running one day, I said, okay, I'm going to do it. Quickly tried to figure out the equipment side of it, and knew nothing about how to interview. Didn't realize that is an art in itself, but I was absolutely terrible at. And decided that I would. My original idea was like I travel all over the place, meet lots of fantastic people. They've got great stories to tell, but most of these stories end up around, they end up in a restaurant at sort of 8 or 9 o'clock at night, where everybody's together and you start talking about stuff. I'm sure you've been to many of those types of situations, and so I thought, well, if we could stick a camera on it, share that conversation, then it would be great for a lot of the people who work for us to learn about what's going on. It'd be great for a lot of our distributors to sort of understand directly from the horse's mouth what our clients are thinking, and also be a great thing for the industry, because my view is rising tide lifts all boats, and if we can all collectively create a bigger pie, then we're all part of a much bigger opportunity. So that was the idea. It coincided with me moving to America, so it also was a great way to meet with lots of people and learn about what was going on in their lives. If you think about it, if you asked to speak to anyone, including me for you and you for me, and we said, look, can I have a chat for an hour? You'd be like, an hour? Are you kidding me? And by the way, I'm not going to. I'm going to ask you lots of questions. I don't want you to be prepared, and you're going to probably just answer all those questions, and I'm going to record it, and I'm going to share it with loads of people. It's that doesn't happen very often, but within podcasts, it's you end up being able to meet fantastic people. You can have some great conversations. And so, although, as you know, it's kind of more of a passion project, it takes up a lot of time and costs a lot of money to run it. I think it's a great thing to do, and people like yourself and others just sharing ideas and information is great, because how often we were having a chat here about what's going on in the fitness industry, how are things in different markets, and really the fitness industry is a very small industry. The data, certainly from the supplier side, is very limited. It gets a little bit better when it comes to the operator, but even so, it's very much in pockets. So there's nowhere you could go that really tells you what's going on. And the only way that you get to learn about it is you'll go to a trade show and you'll have a bit of a chat around the bar, and you get this Chinese whispers, and it's like your view on reality ends up to being quite distorted. Whereas I think if if more people are doing this and having conversations, you can at least, if you're interested in the industry, you can listen to it, and you can start to get a much better feel of what's going on now from people that are living and breathing it. And so I think it can only be a good thing for the industry.
Well done. Like, you're one of the people that inspired us to start our own, because we just wanted to share digital fitness journeys, and I think for us, we were trying to take the stigma off. It's not as hard as everyone thinks. I think there was a point during COVID is the execution was harder than it's worth type thing. And I think, the thing for us, the feedback that we get constantly is, hey, you actually, hearing Tiago's story, or, John Blackburn's, or, they all go, it actually wasn't that hard. Once people actually step it out, it's like, well, I can do that. And I imagine a lot of people have listened to the guests on your podcast going, you hear their life and you go, okay, he wasn't extremely smarter than me, or all the rest of it actually inspires a lot more change. And that's what we've realized in ours. Imagine you've had that feedback as well on yours.
I think the other thing, which it doesn't get talked about a lot at all, and in some cases, if there's 4 or 5 of us, let's say at Ursa in LA, and we had a chat, and we're all guys, there's certain things that we probably wouldn't be comfortable with saying and talking about, and just men being men, we always have to put on a particular front. And whenever you ask anyone, and this, oh, how's business? Oh yeah, it's great, we're killing it. We all know that's total bollocks. But anyway, that's what we do. And the thing about the podcast is, I think you can kind of have conversations which relate to people, because we all know life is ups and downs, and we can talk about things, about it being difficult, and about failure, and about picking yourself up, and that your mindset. What did you think when you didn't want to get out of bed? What got you out of bed, for example, and what was the first thing that you did, and who did you call, and what did you write down? And some of those things, I think, just they give me hope when things are difficult. And I think a lot of people that listen to it, they can do it in private. They don't have to share it. They can relate to it if it inspires them to make a change or to do something that they've not done. Like, it's beautiful that you guys were inspired to do a podcast because of what I did, and now all the things that will go off that. So if you can inspire, in a month, if you can inspire 2 or 3 people to go and do something, then if nothing else, it just makes you feel great about what you're doing.
Totally. And I think that's been my, like, as a host, I guess, has been trying to get those authentic stories out. That's the real, I think that's the real art, right? I think everyone, but the more we get those authentic stories out, the more we kind of, make it's not this magical story. It's everyone can achieve what they want to achieve if they want to put their mind to it. And I think these things help. So well done to you, sir. And then I think probably just from an entrepreneur point of view, Matthew, like what would be your advice in this kind of post-pandemic, in terms of just managing themselves? I think, a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this. So, what would be your kind of nuggets in terms of how you manage and stay so positive, I guess?
I'm always cautious about giving advice, and for a number of different reasons. Yes. What I can say is from my own things that I have found have been good for me. Is the first thing is the health and fitness is really the backbone of everything in my life, whether it's business, my relationships with my wife, with my kids. when things are going up and down, the one thing that seems to make things seem a little bit better is I'll go and have a run, go and have a workout, and just somehow, and I know there's science to back this up now, but your brain gets oxygen, you think clearer, the endorphins flow, and you're just a better person to deal with tough situations. So fitness is really key. And I know it's difficult when things are difficult. I know it's a challenge when things are difficult to go to the gym or to do a workout, because you're like, well, I've got all this going on. It's probably not a good time for me to be leaving things for an hour. But it's almost like that's exactly when you've got to put health and fitness first. You got to prioritize that. And if you can do it before you get involved in everything else, I think it generally pays dividends. The second thing, which is your nutrition, what do you eat, and getting that under control, because I'm not saying there's any particular magic diet that I found, but just getting your diet straight, eating decent food, stop eating junk, don't drink too much alcohol, all the basic stuff, but getting that in order allows you to be more equipped to deal with whatever life throws at you. The other one that I've learned about probably in the last 3 years since I've brought one of these things is I'm a bit obsessed by it now, in fact, but it is amazing when you start to track how you are mentally, if you do diaries and your sleep and your recovery. I think just sleep. When I started my business, it was very much you don't sleep, you just work 24/7, and that's the sign of a real successful.
We came from the same school.
Now I've kind of realized that maybe it's a little bit of age, but just getting that recovery and prioritizing that and making sure that you're not worn down and stressed, just makes you a better person in general. So I think those are
I'm always interested in this on those trackers, because I used to be one of those individuals that would have a bad sleep. Of course, I'll be in the red, and then I'll train like a madman. Like, in course, that just doubled up, the issues but then I've actually started to listen to it, like you, for the last probably 4 years, I've been trying to find the same candidates based off my recovery in terms of my training. Like, do you listen to it? Like, when you've had a bad recovery, will you take it down a notch in terms of your training? Or because sometimes I found it very hard, I think similar to you and probably most people that are listening to this podcast, it's kind of my mental health is built into my fitness. So I have to go do that to go make better decisions and handle what the world's going to chuck in front of me. But sometimes just taking it easy and going to hit ice baths and, maybe just do a little cycle just didn't really tick the box, but I've kind of trained myself to embrace that.
Yeah.
Have you, or?
I've learned quite a bit about, I was like you, and I needed that sort of adrenaline fix, and I felt, I think in my mind, I sort of said to myself that that's required. I've through the podcast, really, I've got to meet some amazing people, and so I've really mixed up my workouts and do different types of workouts. Some stuff I'll do, which seems to be easier on the body, but I'm still fit as I'm achieving something. And then other things that probably used to just run me down and wear me down, I'll decide when and where to do that. I like to do something. I feel better when I do something, but I've probably I'm just a little bit more balanced than I was, and I feel better for it. I don't get sick or anything. You're sort of forcing yourself to get sick in a lot of cases because you're just pushing yourself a little bit too far, and then you add some international travel and some bad food, and then a few late nights with dinner with clients on a different time zone, and you're in a mess, aren't you, really, quite quickly?
My old mentor used to say it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I used to always go, bugger off, everything's a sprint, let's just go get this done. But the older I get, the more I agree with that sentiment.
And the other thing that's a really new thing, but through people I've been speaking to is to figure out, is to work on being a lot more present. And that's a really weird sort of thing to say, but I've spent since the pandemic 3 or 4 years aiming to reduce my alcohol intake. So I'll do a month, then I'll stop, and then I'll do 2 months or 3 months. So I've spent a lot more time doing that. And one of the things I've realized is that when you're drinking, it's very easy to switch off. I guess that's why people do it. You basically switch off, whether it's like, okay, well, I'm going to come home and I'll have a glass of something, you're essentially turning your brain off and
Yes.
you're not thinking. Or if it's if it's on a weekend and it's maybe it's a Saturday, it's like, okay, let's go and get a cocktail or whatever. At that point, you've almost like turned yourself onto autopilot, and then everything else takes off. It's very difficult it's more challenging not to have that drink, because then you're like, okay, now I've got to figure out what to do. I've got to be present. I've got a lot more time on my hands. I've got to entertain myself. It's hard work, but getting through that, what it does do is it does bring you back down to, okay, well, this is my life, and the bits that probably you either liked or you didn't like, you've got to face them, because that's the only reality that you've got. And I think over time it gets you to question the things that you may have just done because it was you was on autopilot, and you can start working and changing and improving those things. And I think the same goes in business. It's very easy. Monday comes in and I do this on a Monday and this on a Tuesday, and I start here and I finish there. Everything becomes fairly predictable and routine, and you're almost like, okay, how many of these meetings are you actually going in there as though it's the first time and asking questions and being totally curious? Or are you going in there and there's the agenda, it was very similar to what it was last year, and the same people are in there and you kind of have very similar conversations? And I think the more we can, a guy, Billy Blanks, I interviewed, and he said, I said to him, what are your habits and rituals? And he said, I don't have any habits and rituals. He says that, habits and rituals are just totally the opposite to what I want in my life, because when you have a habit or a ritual, it's essentially just an automatic thing that you do. And he says, he's a martial artist, and he says, I want to be totally present. So whatever's happening, I'm looking at it for what it is, and I'm deciding what to do. And so I think in business, it's the same sort of thing. You can easily react to situations, to people. And if as entrepreneurs, we can be more present, I feel we'll be better as entrepreneurs. And
I know you don't like giving advice, but that was pretty good advice. and look, how do people, I know most people that are listening to this already know you, but how do people get in contact with you, sir?
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn's probably a good one because it's his business, but we've got YouTube. We Escape Your Limits YouTube channel. We're on iTunes. We put out a weekly interview there, and then those are probably the main places.
Yeah, well, look, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your authenticness as well. It was nice to interview you. So I appreciate you, Matthew. Appreciate your time.
And thanks, Paul, for doing this. Keep up the good work, and
will do.
Thank you for everything you do as well.
Cheers. Thank you, Matthew. Bye for now.